As a composer, there are two particular things I'm always faced with when it comes to libraries and jamming out in the DAW. The first is, there always seems to be a closet collection of libraries hanging around that I don't really use, but I can't bring myself to get rid of. Some have a few sounds I like and haven't quite found a place for yet. The second is, when I'm just playing a library and not composing, there are quite a few good snippets, grooves, or phrases that come out naturally, but they're not something I'd make a song out of, and they're not always in the style I generally compose in. Over the years, I've wondered about the many libraries I have and about the many inspired moments I've had playing around with them that were lost to the past. I've always strived to conserve moments of creative spark I have to carry me through the times when there is none. Then I got to thinking about loops. Loops are some of the oldest kinds of samples around, and they're the bedrock for music like hip-hop, industrial, and electronica. I personally don't really like loop libraries. I prefer to play instruments. But there's an old and unchanging niche about loops. They capture a fleeting moment of creativity, and most moments of creativity are fleeting. So I decided to boot up a bunch of old patches from a bunch of libraries and mess around with them like I did when I first got them. The result always ended up with something like this. Interesting, right? But not exactly a song idea. But these are ideas I couldn't come up with using another library. They're unique to this library. So what do? I set the tempo, quantize depending on what I'm playing, and play something interesting for 4 bars. And I might add a little to it. Just one patch, one 4-bar phrase. Then when I bounce or render it, I've captured a creative spark. But for me, this is just the beginning of something much larger. I drag in another patch and make something else. Simplicity is always best. Then another one. I keep going until I get worn out. Now I've got a collection of 4-bar snippets. I can export all of these stems as waves, but I usually like to run them through an effects chain first, just to spice them up. Some compression, parallel distortion and reverb, a preamp and a limiter to keep them at a constant volume. I name all the tracks weird names, then I export all the tracks as waves to my Loopstorm folder. Now what do? I take all these waves and put them into a new Kontakt instrument, one on each key. Then I go through and set each one to loop and sync with Time Machine Pro. Then I adjust the volumes to make sure they all sound similar and save the patch. Now what I have is a collection of loop patches that contain synced loops of my creative sparks. Here they are, immortalised, and can serve as a basis for a song or a background pulse, or they can even be played as a beat instrument. All those moments I had with these libraries are retained and can be recalled in a musical way whenever I need them, and I can get rid of some of those old libraries I don't use anymore to save space. I like to keep projects set to my favourite tempos, so I can switch out a 90 BPM template when I need to. Then I just record a whole bunch of phrases, render them and add some effects, rinse, repeat. It's a great way to stimulate your latent creativity without the burden of making an entire song. And turning the loops into contact instruments also provides downtime working in a different way, and also helps you to get more familiar with the contact basics. Of course, you want to make sure that the end of your loop sounds similar to the beginning of your loop, so the phrase can repeat without sounding choppy. The truth is, I get a lot of small ideas for jamming in the style of funk, blues, jazz, pop, and so on, but I don't really make songs in that style. There's a certain kind of sound that comes out of you when you're fooling around as opposed to when you're composing, and it'd be a shame to have those unique moments forgotten. Loops can give those moments a tangible purpose and future. The great thing about it is that no matter what library you get, if you get in the habit of looping, there will always be two ways to use each library. The way you use it for your compositions, and the way you use it immediately for your loops. And that way can be even more rewarding at times. So, what are you waiting for? Dig up all your old libraries and rekindle some old romance in a loop. You won't regret it.